Free Practice 1 and Free Practice 2 have concluded for Friday in Canada, and ultimately I don't really think it's going to be very representative of the race pace or even qualifying pace we're going to see heading into tomorrow and Sunday. I think Canada's one of them race weekends where, because the track isn't used in between F1 races in terms of racing, I think it's a very, very difficult track to really sort of get your edge in and really sort of understand sort of where the cars truly are. Now, obviously, a lot of people can have their own opinions on it, and that is completely okay. But for me, on Friday in Canada, for me, it's completely unrepresentative. Free Practice 1 is literally putting your markers down, essentially, and putting grip on the track, essentially, for you to then go on to for Free Practice 2. And then, obviously, Free Practice 2 is then sort of finding where the car fits when you've sort of got that grip underneath you. Obviously, if you want to really go in terms of representative running, I think you'd probably say, in terms of race running, I think you'd say Free Practice Run is the best for that sort of race pace type vibe. And then if you want to go for quali pace, it would obviously be Free Practice 2. But ultimately, there's obviously an F1 Academy race. Is there F1 Academy qualifying that's still got to take place? And obviously, you've then got to deal with Free Practice 3 tomorrow as well before we get to the qualifying session, which is where we're obviously going to get to see some proper running in anger for the first time this weekend, in my opinion. Obviously, it's been sort of an interesting sort of session for me. Obviously, Free Practice 1, we saw Charles Leclerc hit the wall. If we obviously then went to go... I felt a bit bad for Leclerc, if I'm completely honest with you, because he quite clearly realised he'd locked up and assumed that he had enough space to get through the gap, and ultimately probably would have been better off to just go straight on down the escape road. But I guess that's one way you live and you learn. Obviously, that then ended up with him missing out on FP2, which, in my opinion, could have a massive impact this weekend, because I think Canada's one of those tracks where you've got to get your foot in, you've got to get your eye on the ball early, you've got to understand what you're sort of doing and how you're sort of showing up, in my opinion. And I think when you look at, obviously, Charles Leclerc missing an entire hour of running, you look at Lance Stroll as well in FP2 hitting the wall early doors, I think it's really sort of one of those weekends where that could really impact you heading into qualifying and into the race, because you don't get Leclerc didn't really get any running in a sense. If we just find out how many laps did Leclerc actually get in, Leclerc only got 9 laps of running today, which obviously isn't great. You then sort of, obviously Lance Stroll did do Free Practice 1, so that's better for him. But if we sort of want to look at Lance Stroll as well, if we go into that second practice session, I don't think he got many laps done at all, if I'm completely honest, which obviously isn't great for him. It actually doesn't tell me how many laps he's done, but he only used 1 tyre, so it will be one of those for me where it's obviously a disappointing one for both drivers to miss out, especially Lance Stroll hitting the wall after that injury that he picked up a few weeks ago, but it ended up costing him the Spanish Grand Prix. But it's really difficult to sort of judge the pecking order. I've got no doubt in my mind that McLaren will be at the front. I've obviously got no doubt in my mind that the next team is probably going to be Mercedes or Red Bull, and then Ferrari is sort of going to pinpoint themselves in between the likes of Yuki Tsunoda and Kimi Antonelli. But it's going to be an interesting one. Williams seems to have a lot of pace, but obviously that could be a case of they've turned their engines up really early in comparison to that of the likes of Ferrari, the likes of Red Bull and things like that. And obviously, I think when you look at practice, you've got to be really honest in the sense of, let's put it in football context, you don't judge a team based on their pre-season. You judge a team based on what they do in the competitive fixtures. And the way I look at practice, especially for a team like Red Bull, is they literally go through everything possible to be able to find the perfect setting for qualifying for Max. I'm not saying they do the same thing for UK, if I'm completely honest, but in terms of Max Verstappen, they certainly go through and find sort of the best possible settings, and that may mean that in Free Practice 1 and Free Practice 2 they're a little bit off the pace, but always by qualifying that they've found the perfect model for Max, and he's able to string a couple of decent laps together and ultimately puts himself most of the time in the conversation for pole position. A lot of people probably will turn around and go, oh, well, that's just Max brilliance, but ultimately you've got to have the performance underneath you. I've said this time and time again on the channel. If you don't have performance behind you in the car, you're not going to get it. Like, if you put Max Verstappen in the Sauber, yes, he might perform better than Nico Hülkenberg and Gabi Bortoleto, but he's not going to win races. He's not going to get podiums in that car. And I think that's the sort of thing that people don't understand when it comes to sort of driver ability and stuff. Like, you've got a lot of people at the moment obviously trashing on Lewis Hamilton, but if you gave Hamilton the McLaren, he'd probably be winning races. So it's one of those sort of trade-offs that I think the fans that really truly understand Formula One and how important the car is won't have a problem with what I've just said, whereas you've got a certain group of fans that won't sort of acknowledge the truth in that regard, and that's sort of where the disappointing facts are around sort of the Formula One fan base. But obviously, if we take a bit of a deeper look into free practice one, Max Verstappen leading the way with the 1:13.1. You've then got both Williams of Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz in P2 and 3 within a tenth of Max Verstappen. Next up is George Russell, 3.5 tenths down. Then it's Lewis Hamilton, 0.427. Then it's Isaac Hadjar, 0.438. Lando Norris, 0.458. Then it's Liam Lawson with a 0.544. Gasly, 0.624. Then you've got Charles Leclerc, who obviously only got 9 laps done. I think they were all on the medium tyre, but you can correct me. No, it might have been on the soft, actually. I think most teams use the soft. 0.692. Then you've got Yuki, 0.734. Fernando Alonso, 0.779. Kimi Antonelli, 0.8. Oscar Piastri, a second down, along with Lance Stroll. Gabby Bortoleto, 1.1. Ollie Behrman, 1.3. Esteban Ocon, 1.4. Franco Colapinto, 1.45. And Nico Hülkenberg, 1.628. Ultimately, as I've said earlier on in this video, I don't really think you can get a true representation of pace from these sessions. I think Lance Stroll got 2 laps done, didn't even complete a flying lap in that session. But if we want to go for just to prove sort of how the track evolves across the course of a weekend, in free practice 1, the quickest time was a 1:13.193 by Max Verstappen. In free practice 2, it's a 1:12.123 by George Russell, with Lando Norris within 0.03 of a second. You've then got Kimi Antonelli, 0.288. Alex Albon, 0.322. Fernando Alonso, 0.335. Then you've got Oscar Piastri, Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, both racing bulls in 10th and 11th. Pierre Gasly, Bortoleto and Hülkenberg, 13th and 14th. Yuki Tsunoda in 15th. Behrman and Ocon in 16th and 17th. You've then got the Alpine of Franco Colapinto in 18th, and then you've got Lance Stroll in 19th. Obviously, Charles Leclerc didn't run. Now, in regards of sort of where I expect sort of pace to be, I've got no doubt in my mind that McLaren will be on it tomorrow, and that genuinely doesn't, like, realistically, it is going to be sort of McLaren pushing for that sort of 1-2, in my opinion. And I think in regards to what we're going to see in qualifying, I think it is going to be really tight across the course of the entire grid, if I'm completely honest. I don't think it's one of those weekends that's going to sort of be sort of a massive split. I think at the end of Q1, I think we're probably going to be looking at maybe a second between the whole grid. I think when everybody turns their engines up and everybody's sort of on the same sort of fuel loads and things like that, on the same age tyres, I think we're going to see maybe a completely different order shaking it up. And that'll obviously be very, very interesting to see. Now, obviously, there is a lot to learn from the teams. Obviously, Charles Leclerc, they'll have to break the curfew tonight in order for him to be able to compete tomorrow, because I believe it's an 8-hour or 9-hour fix, because they've got to change the chassis and everything like that. I believe Karun Shandok said in comms that it's about a 9-hour fix, which is obviously sort of going to be a long one for the mechanics. They'll probably break curfew tonight, and then it's going to be a mad rush for them in terms of getting it ready for free practice 3. If we do actually go on to the schedule and look at sort of how things are track time. So realistically, practice 2 was finished at 6 o'clock Canada time, which means I don't know when the curfew actually starts, but they could probably get a good 4 hours in tonight. Then realistically, they'd have to get to the track for 7 to get it pretty much set up and ready for free practice 3, which will obviously be an interesting one. Can Charles Leclerc get himself on track, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. You've got to think they'll have been working on that car since the end of free practice 1, so they may even actually get it done today. In complete honesty, they might not have to break the curfew. I completely forgot that they would have had that long to do it. But it's one of those for me. I think there's a very, very interesting weekend ahead of us. Race pace is looking a bit sort of iffy for the likes of Ferrari. Started off well, dropped down a little bit. Max Verstappen's putting in some really good times in terms of sort of that race run. Mercedes did a really long race run and seemed to be in a decent window, and obviously we all sort of anticipate McLaren will be there. But obviously, if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, hit the like button as well while you're down there, and I'll catch you in my next